Welcome back. We are MDEV1001, that's Mobile Data Management, in the summer 2023 semester at Georgian, and it's week 4. Again, I can't believe week 4 is past already. We're here at week 4, part 1 of our broadcast and recording. And as of this moment, we have 16 people in class. I'm recording this. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people online. 25 people. Again, not a great ratio, but not a terrible ratio either, even with live classes normally. So I'm pretty happy with the participation. Thank you guys again. I always thank you guys because I really appreciate the fact that you're here. It makes my job as a professor way easier when I have people here that I can talk to. And I'm sure it makes your job easier too when you're here, because then you can ask questions and I can see if you're understanding something. I think I know when you're understanding things. Sometimes I'm wrong or not. So we're sitting at week 4, and there's not a lot of slides in this presentation for a couple reasons. This is more of a demo-heavy side presentation. We have lots to do today, and for me to give you more and more theory in the 3 hours that we have is not a lot of time. So I'm going to get right to it, coding. So bring out your MacBook or your Mac, fake Mac, whatever you got, right? And be ready, because we're actually going to do some stuff with iOS today. If we have time, and I'll put this as a proviso, and if it's plenty of time, somehow we finish really early, I doubt it, we never do, then we'll see if we can delve into the Android side and just ad hoc get it done, okay? But if not, that will be your job, okay? And I'll talk about how that's going to be for your in-class exercise 4, which is a bigger in-class exercise. I want you guys to notice something before we get moving. The in-class exercises are getting more and more challenging, right? Because I started them off super easy. Free marks was the first one, right? Like you literally had an empty repository. And the second one, you had another few more things. And the third one, you had more. And this one, you're going to have a full project that you're going to put together. And next time, and maybe one that we're not even doing together. And why am I doing that? Because it's worth 4% of your final grade each one. These are just like an assignment, but we're here together. So they count. They really do count. And we're ramping up. So by the time we get to our mid-semester break, and you're going to have your mid-semester test, which I got to talk about now because we're about halfway there to your mid-semester test. Kind of like the midpoint of the midpoint, right? We're a quarter way through, or whatever you want to call it. Mid-semester test will be measured for 3 hours. That means it should take you at least 3 hours to get it done, right, around that time. I'm probably going to measure it for myself much less. If I could do it in an hour, it's probably going to take you 3 hours. And again, also because I know what I want, and I'm the professor, I'm putting the thing together, so I know what it is I want. You may not, so then it's going to take you longer. I will try and give you a starter. I'll try, right? And the starter will, hopefully get you going on a certain thing. Sometimes when I give a starter that's too big, right, as an example, like there's lots of stuff there, it's actually worse. Because it's like, then you have to look through the thing, right? And what is that? Well, Tom's code, right? This is not my code. So now it's like, well, I wouldn't have coded it that way, but Tom wants us to use this structure, and now I got to do it this way. It's more realistic, but I'm not sure if it's realistic for a mid-semester test. Maybe we'd do it for the final, where we actually say, okay, now you're getting everything we just did, and modify it, right? We'll see how it goes. If I do give you something on week 7, it's going to be something we built together, like here. So you already have, everything about it, right? Like, something like that, okay? It's going to be practical, so there probably will not be any true-false multiple choice tests, okay? One other thing I will do is I will test you with a quiz between now and week 7. It's going to happen either next week or the week after, just letting you know. Quizzes, how do they work, right? It's going to count for one of your in-class exercises, and all it's going to do is it's going to be basically sampling information from the PowerPoint slides and the discussions, not just that, but things we talk about here in class too, are also fair game. So if it's on the recording, it's fair game. If I said something in the recording, then it's something that that might be on the test. It'll be randomized multiple choice true false. You'll have 2 attempts typically when I give you a quiz, right? And you'll have, if it's, let's suppose for 4%, I gave you 12 questions. Again, how much is too much? How much is too little? If I give you 1 question for every 1%, 1 question is like crazy. You're gonna lose a huge mark out of your your final marks, right? Can't be 1 question per percent. It's got to be more. It's a gamble if I do 1%. If I do 2%, 2 questions for a thing, again, it's It's rolling the dice. Maybe I got it, maybe I didn't, right? It's got to be like 3 or 4, which means 3 or 4 questions multiplied by 4% has got to be at least 12 to 16 questions. 12 to 16 questions. If I had 12 to 16 questions and you have access to Google, ChatGPT, all my PowerPoint slides and all that stuff, guess what you're getting? 12 to 16 minutes. All right, so you're not getting a lot of time, right? 12 to 16 minutes, which means you need to go through that and do your searching and whatever, ChatGPT and whatever, really goddamn quick, or know your stuff, right? So it's going to be something like that, right? And typically I make it under. If I give you something like 12 questions, I give you 10 minutes, right? Something like that. So it's more challenging. If I give you 16 questions, it's probably going to be, I don't know, 15 minutes or less, right? Okay, and that's coming up. The good thing is you get 2 attempts. But the second, then, yeah, I take the highest of the 2 attempts. That's what I do. I'm not going to do something like, you've been muted. Who muted me? Who?
Hi, sorry, I'm muted.
That's okay. I've unmuted myself. So typically what I do is I take the top attempt. So if you have 2 attempts, then I take the highest mark. That's what I do. But the risk is, because it's multiple choice, true, false, randomized questions. Think about this now. If I'm going to put together a test bank, which is what I'm going to do, based on the questions, the stuff I have in the PowerPoint slides, it's not going to be some random test bank you're going to look up. Oh, he's using this book, let's look up that test bank. No, it's going to be from what we do, right? And if I put something like that together, how many questions do you think I'm going to put together in the test bank to make it so that the second test you're probably going to get is totally different than the first test? How many of those? 4 times, 5 times maybe? Right? So I'm probably going to put together, if I give you 16 questions, I'm probably going to put together how many, right? 100, right? So out of 100 questions, you're going to get served 12 to 16 questions, and out of those, you have anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes to get it done. You get 2 attempts, go, right? That's what it's going to be like, just letting you know, all right? Why do we do this? It's not that difficult, actually, because you have everything's open, but it is going to test you. So next week, and I'm in my mind, I'm always thinking like week 6 is probably where it's going to happen. Not next week, because next week we're doing more crud, where I need you guys to practice. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen week 6. If it won't happen, I'll tell you next week. I'll say that's not going to happen, right? I'll say that too, right? But there will be some tests, some little quizzes and stuff like that, this semester. And it's really just to quiz your knowledge more than anything else. Good thing is your YouTube videos do allow you to kind of talk it through, even though you might be reading something that you wrote with ChatGPT, right? You're still talking it through, which is good. It's a good thing. Talk it through. It goes to your brain at least one time, right? And that's a really good thing. Let's talk about, before we move on to anything else, I want to talk about the in-class exercise that I marked, okay? And let's talk about marking and how that all works for me, right? The first in-class exercise, I expected you to have your GitHub repository working, right? So, part of your mark has to be on GitHub. So if you didn't submit your GitHub, you lost at least a mark, right? Think about this. Out of 4 possible marks, that's 25% was based at least on your GitHub, right? If you didn't submit a video at all, you get 0, all right? So no video, no marks is the motto in this course, all right? That's the second thing you have to think about. If your video had poor sound, but I could hear it, right, slightly, especially if I bumped up the sound somehow with my magic tricks that I would do at home, I still accepted it. If your video had 0 sound, it doesn't count as a video, you get 0 marks, right? That's what it would be. If your video was you recording yourself, which I had some people do that. Some people just recorded themselves with your phone, right? I gave you a warning in your in-class exercise number 1 and said, hey, it's not about recording you, it's about recording your screen. Use a screen recording software like OBS, right? And you probably got that feedback. I don't really care to see your beautiful face, all right? No matter how beautiful and young it is, okay? I'm jealous, but I don't need to see it, all right? That's number 1. I need to see your screen. I need you to demonstrate your stuff, right? If you want to put a small image of yourself in the bottom right-hand corner like I do with my videos, or on the top right left corner, or wherever you want to put it, yeah, go ahead. If that makes you feel comfortable. OBS allows you to do that very easily. It's not even an issue, right? But if for you to record yourself with your phone or record your screen with your phone, it's not acceptable. I said that in the email I sent you guys, and it's not acceptable now too. All right. So I wouldn't have given you any marks for your in-class exercise 1, right? About that, I also asked you some stuff about in-class exercise. Well, what did I ask you to do in in-class exercise 1? Do you guys remember? There was a couple things I asked you to do. A relational and a non-relational database. I asked you to describe that. So part of your video, Mark, was did you talk about your non-relational versus relational? Some people did a whole PowerPoint slide deck. I was really appreciative of that. I actually looked through it and I was like, wow, okay, cool. That, this person took some extra time and they talked about it. Does it have to be like that every time? No, it does not. But, I got to know you a little bit. Some people actually made a really nice video. Some people actually used music too. Wow. Right? I was like, okay, that guy's really, or that girl is really great at this kind of thing. And other people's video was like, I couldn't hear your sound. I barely saw you, right? And it was bad. It was a terrible echo. Like it was like, like you've never had an experience making videos before, which is hard to believe at this in this day and age with COVID and all that, right? So I don't know how you made it through school, without making videos. So now, and the other thing is video format. Some people uploaded MP4s as of today after this in-class exercise 4, because I haven't said this maybe strongly enough. I'm going to say it again. No MP4s, no uploads, okay? I'm not looking for uploads. Uploads take space on our server. They will be removed, right? Just letting you know. So that means just by chance, if you upload something like a big file, I may not see it. It'll say, file removed, right? So don't do that. Please submit links. And I've seen some links. People have used Loom. People have used YouTube. A lot of people use YouTube. YouTube is preferred. It's easy. It's no problem. It's a one-step process. You can broadcast with using OBS, and it's a one and done. Broadcast and submit. But please, check your sound. Like before you submit stuff, check it out. What are you submitting? Some people actually submitted, this is weird too, they recorded themselves, but they were pointing at their screen. And they were talking about, okay, you can see here that I got my GitHub repo. And they're recording the wrong screen, guys. They're recording themselves. But they're actually talking about a screen that I can't see, right? And they don't know, right? And they don't know because they're rushing to submit things. I looked at the upload time. It was like 11 o'clock p.m. on a Sunday, right? And so they're rushing. They're worried to get it done, so they're submitting, right? Please don't do that. What I'm asking you to do is, I need to see your screen. If you want to add yourself, yes, that's okay. But if I don't see what I'm asking for, if you don't demonstrate the thing I'm asking for, even if you give me your video, you're not going to get full marks. You haven't demonstrated what I'm asking for. Show me your GitHub repository. Show me your application. Show me your Visual Studio Code. I need to see those things. If I don't see those things, it's like you haven't made a video for me, right? Please do that. Think about this as a video report more than anything else, right? Where you're showing me your stuff. And of course, there were some people who did not submit their in-class exercise 1, 2, or 3, okay? Now, remember, you get 2 freebies, right? Maybe 1 and 2. But the third one, you've lost 4% of your final grade, right? So if you're one of these people who hasn't submitted anything, you still have a chance to get 96% of the mark for your, or something like that, for your participation and all that stuff. So please don't despair. You can still get 100% if you've done 2, and if you skipped 2 somehow, you missed the first one and the second one, or you missed the second one and the third one, you still can get 100%. I built it this way so that way, bad things happen. People travel, people do stuff, people whatever. There's water leakages that people have, like me. Whatever. Things happen, right? So I'm a human being. I'm not a monster, and so I think about those things for you, right? Also, you may have got a note, and you may still get a note from now or future that I want you to resubmit. If I ask you to resubmit, it doesn't mean that you're going to get full marks, right? I'm asking you to resubmit to give you some marks, right? Because right now you're getting 0, right? So if you get a resubmission message, right, like on Blackboard, and it says you didn't submit your video, and for you to submit your video means you need a video link. Okay, it's not a MP4 or a link that's in your GitHub repository or buried somewhere where I can't find it. And the same thing goes with your GitHub link. If your GitHub link is in your PowerPoint slide deck that you showed, but you never actually submitted a link, look, guys, you have one job when you're submitting. All the stuff that I'm asking you to submit your links. It's pretty simple, right? If you don't submit it, I can't give you marks for it. Or if it's improper, GitHub. Yeah, I've had all kinds of wonderful submissions for GitHub. One of them was just like nothing. Like there's literally just the GitHub link, and then Inside of GitHub, you had nothing. That's nothing. Thank you for the link, right? But it points to nothing, right? And then I've also had some GitHub links that were inaccessible. The only way that a GitHub link is going to be inaccessible to me is if you sent it to the wrong person, right? Or if you haven't collaborated with me, right? And so you would lose a mark or a mark and a half, depending on which in-class exercise it was. For me, that was in-class exercise 1. ICE 2, let's talk about ICE 2. ICE 2 that I marked had a few different components. One of them was the ERD. Some people didn't do that, right? Some people claimed, well, I can't use the ERD because I can't do the ERD with star UML because star UML is not registered and I can't do it. No, you can. And if you didn't want to use star UML, I mean, there's nothing that would have stopped you from using Paint to make your ERD. You don't have to use star UML. You can use whatever tool you wanted to do it. You know, Visio was another option, and there's tons of them out there that'll do an ERD. So ERD was one of the marks. Your GitHub repo was the other one. Your in-class, your database was the other one. I'm looking for your database because that's something that I asked you for. Visual Studio Code, I need to see. Your connection to the database somehow would be through either Visual Studio Code or through a console. I need to look at that. And that was that part, right? And then there's the video you're actually going to demonstrate. So the video has to be good, right? And your GitHub repo. So some people gave me the video, no GitHub repo, and they talked about stuff. And they pointed the video at themselves again, right? Pointing the video at yourself, and thank you for the video. Again, you're lovely to look at, but it's useless, guys. I don't want to look at your image. I want to look at you, demo this stuff. Okay, that's what they're for. Okay, I don't know if I can tell you that more and more. If somehow I missed it, like you gave me a video and I didn't see it, there's two possibilities. One, you think you gave me the video, but I don't know where it is. Or two, I missed it. And if I missed it, please send me an email. So that's for you, Jesleen. Jevleen, sorry. Was it Jevleen or Jesleen? I can't remember. It was Jesleen. She's not here anymore. So, yeah, I guess I scared her away. Please send me an email or Discord me. Eventually I'll get to it and then I'll fix it. Guys, trust me, I'm not here to screw you up. Okay? That's not my job. If I haven't done something for you, that's on me. That's for me to fix, not for you to fix. I will fix it. Okay? It might take me a week or two, but I will take care of it and you will get your marks. All right, so that's about in-class exercise 1 and 2. In-class exercise 3, I'm in the process of doing. And let's talk about last week a little bit now. We're moving on. Last week, we talked about local data source types, SQLite platform comparison, Android versus iOS a little bit. And then we also did a little bit of querying local data sources with SQLite directly. In-class exercise 3 was due last Sunday. And I also gave you all the details for assignment 1, which is due this Sunday, right? And, it's really just playing with data in-class exercise. Assignment 1 is more like a larger in-class exercise with you and a partner. Some people, for whatever reason, have not yet signed up for groups. Okay, so let's take a look at that, right? Because, I can't keep telling you to do this. If you don't sign up for a group, right, and, there's some groups that are empty, as an example, and that's fine. But if you don't sign up for a group, even if you're working alone, you will not get a mark. You will not be able to see the assignment. You will not be able to submit, right? You need to sign up for a group, even if you're a group of 1, all right? So please do so as soon as possible, all right? So that's something that you have to do. And it'll be the same thing for all the assignments, right? So assignment 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? That there will be, you need to sign up for groups. Assignment 2, and I wanted to wait to do this to show you the process, all right? So you understand why I'm telling you to do this now, because, so I want to show you how we do groups. Let's make a group together so you can see it from my side. I'm going to pull the curtain open so you can see how it's done, okay, if you haven't seen this already. So there's a couple of options here. I can do self-enroll or manual enroll, okay? If I do self-enroll, which is what I want to do, I create a group set, all right? So it says group information, right? Notice that. Is it visible to students or not? Yes. And then it says sign up sheet only. And then at the bottom, you can see that there's a name for the sign up sheet. And I can decide how many maximum group members. It's going to be 2 again, right? So I put in 2 maximum group members. I'm going to show you the members, right? And what I do, because I don't need to see wikis or content market tools or academic materials or tasks or journals, or file exchange, or a direct email between students, or discussion boards, or blogs, I turn them all off. It's not because I don't have them available, I just don't use them, okay? And then I call it something like, you know, maybe A1 groups or A2 groups, okay? That's how it would be, right? And down here, it would be the A2 group set or A2 groups sign-up sheet, whatever it's going to be. There it is. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Okay, and then I create a smart view for each group. Okay, let me show you this. So when I do that, by the way, it also asks me how many groups do I want. Okay, typically somewhere in here, it's going to ask me, you know, how many groups do I want. Okay, so at the bottom, right, it says number of groups. Now, there's 65 of you or something like that, and typically what I'll do is make 65 groups. I don't need that many groups because some of you are going to pair up, right? But it gives everyone an opportunity to have their own group worst case, right? So that's how it works. So there it is, 65. There we go, and press submit. And then magically, it'll create the group set for me. It's done, right? So now there's a bunch of groups. There's A1 groups, and there's also A2 groups. And some people are like, why can't I just stay in the same group? You can. You just have to sign up again. Okay, that's what happens. Here's your assignment. So if I go to assignment 2, and the second assignment is UI for local data. Haha, right? That's what you're doing. You're actually making a UI, which is what I'm going to be starting with today, with this first in-class exercise, right? It's due June 18th. That's week 6, right? So you have a couple weeks to get it done. And we're going to start, some of the stuff we're doing today is applicable, which means you have time to do this kind of stuff. And the details for this are going to be the following. I'm not finished the PDF, but it's going to be this. You can make either an Android UI or an iOS UI, or you can make both. I won't accept web because that's kind of weird, right, for this example. But either iOS or Android, you can choose either one or both. If you do both, I will provide a bonus. All right? That's what I'm going to tell you right now. So if you work with both, I think it's a great opportunity for you to do that. And let's edit assignment 2 just so you can see it. So assignment 2 right now has been made for individuals. When I click on group submission, I need to select the groups that are available for me to use. That's how it works. I'm showing you this behind the curtain stuff so you understand that if I don't do this, right, and I don't select groups 1, look at how all A1 groups aren't selected, you will not be able to submit stuff. I also give you unlimited attempts. Some people have asked me like, oh, I've already submitted, can I resubmit? Until the thing is closed, you have unlimited attempts to submit, okay? Another thing is, even though the due date that I've given you is the 18th of June, here's what the default is. I display, the submission box stays open at least until the 18th. If it's due the 18th, it stays open. I don't do this. I don't give you just till the 18th. I advance it a couple of days, like until Wednesday typically, right? The 21st. Why do I do this? Just in case, for whatever reason, you know, you didn't have time, something happened, you can't do it on Sunday, at least you get part marks. Not full marks, part marks on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. After Wednesday, 0 marks. That's how it goes, okay? It's not the same for in-class exercises. Some people have said like, can you please accept my in-class exercise because it's, you know, I couldn't do it on Sunday. No, it's in-class exercise. It's supposed to be actually due today, right? Assignments are different. Assignments, you get like 2 weeks to do them. They're a little bit more complex. They might involve another person. You know, that kind of stuff. The first assignment is really easy, right? Second assignment is a little harder. You know, your midterm test is a little harder than that, you know. Then it gets to the third assignment, it's a little bit harder. And by the fourth assignment and the final test, you know, you're really being challenged because now I've built up your capability like a video game, right? We give you the tutorial at the beginning. I give you a couple of small, you know, challenges, and then you get the final boss monster at the end, right? That's how I kind of do it. All my courses are kind of set up this way. Right? So the final boss monster is your final exam, which is happening at the end of semester, right? And usually that boss monster is like a mini boss. He's not even that hard to defeat, right? It's not multi-stage, you know, none of that. Okay? I know you guys don't get that, but it's okay. So, but that's how it is, okay? So this is the assignment 2. I will have the details for assignment 2 UI, but just to think about the 3 things I said, I'm going to need you to make a UI that does full CRUD for iOS or Android, and I'll give you a small bonus if you do both, right? Again, it's not meant to break you, but it does allow you to do things like this. let's suppose I'm working with Hitesh, again, just because, or Indu. Let's say I'm working with one of these two guys. Or let's say they're working together. How about that? Perfect. These two people are working together, and Hitesh says, I'm doing iOS. And Indu says, I'm doing Android. They're going to get the bonus together, right? Isn't that a beautiful thing, right? That's why, right? Because maybe you can split it up. Maybe there's an expert in iOS or really great with Android, right? And then together, you guys can get that extra mark. It's going to make up some marks that you lost in your in-class exercise, or you maybe make up some marks that you lost with your quiz, or something else. I like to do that stuff a little bit here and there, only because I can see how the class is going and people are nervous. I don't want you guys to be nervous. It's going to be just fine. Follow along, participate, and you're going to be beautiful. All right, so that's assignment 2. And it's the same way I'm doing assignment 1. So if you look at assignment 1 that's due this Sunday, remember, it's you and a partner. If you haven't signed up for a group, do so today, right? You need to do it, or else you won't be able to see the assignment submission box, okay? Questions around assignment 1 of what I need you to do. Remember, I kind of did this whole recording last week on it, right? So you should know pretty much what to do. Yeah.
I had one question is the queries that we have to do in this file.
Yeah.
How are we going to show you that? Do you want those queries run and then put it
Is there any
in the
code?
box?
But do I have any code for you anywhere? Right, so there's no code.
Yeah.
It means you must show it in the console somehow, or through Visual Studio, or through some other user interface if you want, right? So you could use, let's say for example, you had a user interface that generated the query for you, right? Okay. Or if you did ChatGPT and figured out how to do the query, okay, right? I just want you to go through it because basically, like I said, it's a small in-class exercise with an extra % with you and a partner. It should be super easy and a chance to focus together on getting those things done. It doesn't matter, as long as you demonstrate it in the console or somewhere, I'm good. And in my opinion, it's like dumb easy, like assignment 1, right?
Question.
Yes. Kosusochuku.
Okay, so if you're two, if you're in a group,
Yeah.
does it have to be just one person that will do the video?
One person. You represent the entire group. I don't need both people to talk. I know that's contra to some other professors, like I said before, but I don't care. As long as one person makes a great video for me and I can hear you and see you and you've demonstrated everything and you represent you and your team, that's on you. If you want to do all the work for somebody, that's on you, right? I mean, it's politics in the class. Call it whatever you like. But I think it's a great opportunity for you to combine with somebody else. If you want to, though, to go further than that, if you let's say again, Eric and I were doing something, right? Or Ramona and I were doing something, as an example, right? And we were doing something together. Maybe I might say to Eric, "Hey, which parts do you want?" I might say that to him, or he might say, "Well, I can do the whole thing." And if Eric is a better presenter than me, I might say, "Okay, but let me help you, right? Let me help you out." You should try and help each other. Don't say something like, "Well, I'll just do the whole thing. It's easy." Well, of course it's easy, right? But sometimes, you may want to add some additional things. This is your opportunity to practice, right? And every assignment and every in-class exercise, anything we do in class is a chance to practice for the midterm test and a chance to practice for the final test. Questions have always been asked. Is the final test cumulative, right? Is the final test cumulative, which means does it include everything? But of course it does. Of course it's cumulative. It's cumulative knowledge. We're not like, this isn't a history class, right? This is not something that I need you to remember every date that I've talked about in history from the beginning to the end. This is like, you need to, either you know how to code or you don't, right? Either you know how to do this stuff or you don't, right? So yeah, of course it's cumulative. And that's what happens. So it builds like a big ramp. It ramps up, it keeps ramping, and then you're at the top at the end, right? We've built up this kind of knowledge. And then afterwards, in the next semester, it starts at the bottom again and builds the next part, right? That's how I do my courses anyway. Okay. Any other questions around assignment 1 or in-class exercises? So if Jasleen was here, maybe she could have asked one, but she's gone. She left. Yes?
In data use, that your repository must include that code, like what type of code?
Well, if your repository is empty, no, but I'm saying if your repository is empty, right, then are you talking about the assignment, or are you talking about the...
Assignment.
Yeah, so your repository must include probably your database, right? That might be good. Your CSV, maybe your other stuff. Anything you remember, even though the version control is used for code, you can write anything you like right in there, right? Here's what I do with my version control system. I use it for everything, right? I'm writing a paper, right? I put it up on GitHub. I'm serious, right? Because GitHub is better than OneDrive. It's better than anything else. It versions everything for me, right? I can always step back and see what I've written, anything I've changed. All those things are there. It's actually the best versioning system out there. So yeah, use it for anything you want. PowerPoint slides, whatever you have. Just don't put MP4s on there. Some people are putting their MP4s in there too. That's a waste of space. Okay, let's move on now to this week. What are we doing? So this week, we're manipulating local data sources, and it's supposed to be full CRUD operations. I kind of looked at the schedule a little bit, and I'm like, we're supposed to do full CRUD operations for both iOS and Android. I'm like, yeah, no, let's slow that down a little bit. This is based on the feedback I'm getting from you guys saying it's a little bit challenging. I'm a little bit scared. I never did console before. I've not done, these things, but I never used Visual Studio Code. Like people are saying all kinds of stuff. I'm getting email that are saying things like, we need you to slow down a little bit. Okay, so here's my slowdown. So this week we're doing reading data, and next week we're doing the rest, like update, delete. Okay, we're going to use only core data this week. And next week, we're going to go into, if I can do the Android side, I will. But I'm going to focus on one. I had to focus on one, Android or iOS. I know you're getting Android more, so I'm just going to give you iOS, right? Might as well. And besides, I think iOS is more challenging than Android. And you're going to get Android a lot easier in many ways than iOS. So that's why I'm going to help you with iOS is what I'm trying to do. So assignment 4, so it says assignment 1 is due this weekend. Assignment 2 has been released, right? Again, it's due week 6, right? But there's no details yet, 100%. But I've given you some idea of what I want, okay? And notice what it says here. Today is going to be a demo heavy, right? There isn't any slides. Why? I'm going to show you screenshots of iOS. Come on. How many of those do you want to see? Who's going to read those? Not me, right? So. And besides, they get dated really fast. Whenever I make slides like that, if I make a slide this semester, next semester it's done, right? They're useless. And why? Because look, WWDC is only 2 weeks away, or whatever it is, not even a week away, right? So they're going to change stuff. We're going to go to the next level of iOS pretty soon. They're adding more features, probably changing Swift up. They just do this with Apple every single semester, every week, every year. I've had to always change stuff. There's always changes. To Apple, whereas Android stays pretty much solid through the entire time. Like, it's not like it changes so much. Kotlin was a huge change, okay? But after that, it's pretty stable for the most part, Android. Where iOS, it just continues to change. Like, Xcode changes, the Mac OS itself changes, minor little things that they want to add and give you that they've had in the books probably for years that they wanted to do, that they haven't implemented yet. So that's why it's tech heavy. So on that, let's get to it. So here I've got my MacBook that I'm using, and I'd like you to pull up your MacBook, please. Please do that. All right. So again, I've said that earlier, and I want you guys to do that today. And for this one, I want to focus on a couple things, right? One thing that I want to focus on is some basics when it comes to interfaces. So let's do the first step. The first step is making a brand new Xcode project. So let's do that together. Kind of talked about this briefly last week, but let's do it anyway. So here we have some options. These options have changed over the years, and I'm sure after WWDC coming up, they're going to change again, right? These things you see here, all right, app, document, game, and so on, are templates, my friends. That's what they are. Just like on Android, where you say, empty project or a project that's got more stuff to it. It's just templates. Starter code is what this is, right? So let's get into it. I'm going to click app and then click next. By the way, there's also tabs up here if you want to develop for Mac OS. Some people have really, for whatever reason, they get confused. They're like, you asked me to make an app because it says app. The template name is the same for iOS, Mac OS, Watch OS, TV OS, and a bunch. And if you clicked on the wrong tab up here, as an example, you're going to get a different set of options. Please also do not click multi-platform, all right? We're clicking on iOS. That's the only platform we're going to use. Next. Let me see if I can maximize without it killing me again. Sometimes it can, Or how about if I can somehow, let's undo that. Let's see if I can hide my. Let's see if I can hide my thing here. Hide the taskbar. You think I remember how to do it? I never hide the taskbar anymore. Show. I think it's properties. Taskbar settings. Lock the taskbar. Automatically hide the taskbar. There we go. Okay. So hopefully this will do what I want it to do, which is full screen. So it'll give you it a little larger, which is what I'm hoping. So now I'm a Mac. I was a PC, now I'm a Mac. People ask me, I was talking to one of my friends, Ross. He's the coordinator for data, big data and AI and stuff. He's like, why don't you go do Mac in the cloud, right? And I'm like, Mac in the cloud is terrible, right? And that's just me. I don't know if you ever used Mac in the cloud, but it's horrendous, terrible, and it's lots of money, right? So no, I don't want Mac in the cloud. So I have Mac. And so the name of the product is going to be MDEV1001 and in the summer 2023 semester. And it's going to be ICE 4, which is what I'm making. I'm using personal, but that's the team that I'm using. And if you have the Georgian account for the development team, you can put that here as well, if you have access to that. I don't. I'm using Storyboard and Swift, and I'm also checking on use core data, because core data, like I talked about last week, is a layer around SQLite. Typically on Mac nowadays or on iOS, I don't use SQLite Direct, ever. It doesn't make any sense. It's like me programming a game with iOS, but I'll probably use Unity, all right? I'm gonna use a tool that makes sense, right? So core data is, like you're gonna see, makes things a lot easier for us, right? Compared to doing queries. In fact, we probably don't have to make any queries happen today, right? Not yet. So that's the first thing. So core data, check that on. Click next, all right? And so this is kind of the thing. Now, it's going to tell me where do I want this thing, and I'm going to go and put this in my ICEs folder, like you. So there's ICE 1, 2, 3. Here's ICE 4, which is where I'm going to put this one, okay? That's what this is going to do. So because ICE 4 already has a GitHub repository, I'm going to wait until this is done. It's indexing right now, okay? And up at the top here, people have asked, why don't you use source control here, built into iOS or Android? And the answer is, it does funky stuff, is the answer. That's why I don't do it. It tries to do things with certificates. It plays all kinds of security games with you. And I don't care for the security that it gives me. I'd rather use command line or whatever. So that's why I don't use it. Not because it doesn't work, and maybe in an organization they'd make you do it. They don't want you to do it with command line. But I'd rather, honestly, if I was going to say anything, use something like Gitkraken. You know, if I was going to do anything, if I was going to use a UI, as opposed to this. So I'm going to use command line. That's what I'm going to do. All right. So yes, I've just created my application, and what you should do immediately to start off with doing nothing else is a couple things. One, what we want to do is up here at the top, it should say your target. Please make your target your iPhone 14 Pro Max. That's what I want you to do. That's kind of the de facto standard phone that probably any of you will buy right now, because guess what? From Bell, if you actually go to Bell or Rogers, if you were going to replace your iPhone, I don't know if you guys have Bell Rogers accounts, you should, right? Hopefully you're not using something small like something else. But even them, they have leases that you can do instead of buying the phone. The phone outright costs like $1,400 or something insane. I'm not spending $1,400 on another phone ever again. All right, I've done it a couple times. I'm not doing it. And so I lease my phone, and the difference between, you know, an iPhone 14 Pro and an iPhone 14 Pro Max is like $5 a month, right? So I'm gonna always get the best phone, right? Which is what they expect you to do, really, right? At the end of the 2 years, I'm going to give my phone back and get an iPhone 16, right? Or whatever the hell it's going to be at that time, right? And that's the deal. I'm going to do that forever. I'm always going to need a phone, and I always want the latest phone, and I'm just going to give my phone back in perfect condition, right? Because I have like a really nice shield and all that stuff. And so the iPhone 14 Pro Max is what we're going to be using. That's my reason for it. Next, main storyboard should be the same, right? So one thing that you want to do with your main storyboard is, like I mentioned last time, is please change the view here. This is your view class, your size class. Please change this to iPhone 14 Pro Max. If you don't, then what you do here and what you put on your simulator will not be what WYSIWYG. It will not be what you see is what you get, like I mentioned before. Okay, so those are the two things I want you to do. You also have this little mini map up here. That's what this is, right? This mini map allows you to move around and do all this kind of stuff with your Xcode. Remember Xcode. Xcode is a slapped together piece of software that used to be two pieces of software. One piece of software is something called Interface Builder, right? And then they slapped it together to make Xcode. But one time they were actually separate pieces of software where you did an interface here and you did your code over here, right? So I like it and I don't like it. My review of Xcode is it's not as good as Visual Studio. It's just not, right? And actually even Android Studio is not as good as Visual Studio in my books, right? I've used Visual Studio extensively over the years, and it's just so much more straightforward and more customizable in many ways than this, right? But the good thing is it does allow you to hide some stuff. So that's what you can do. You can, just a bit of a review, you can hide these things, you can hide those things, you can do that. So you can give yourself more, I know my friends get mad at me when I say this, screen real estate, okay? Which is what I like. They're like, real estate top, you're a funny guy. Why do you say that, right? Because that's how I see it, screen real estate, how much room things take up on the screen. So that's what I do. You have your outliner over here, which is what we're going to see as a review. And over here, you have your navigator. On the top, there's all these tabs, like I said, and we're going to use some of them today. All right, so that's your app. First thing you should do is run your app and run the simulator, because, I'm just going to close the simulator down, right here, because it takes time for the simulator to load on my phone anyway. So I'm going to run it, and it's going to be a blank app with a blank simulator. Please do that right now, right? It's going to say build successful. You should hear a sound. The sound right now is happening at home. It's probably going boom, right? Whatever that sound is that you're going to hear. And then it's doing its thing. Okay, so please run it and build it and all that kind of stuff. Now, for people like Indu who have been doing this for a while, please forgive me. I know I'm going super slow, and this is like baby slow for some people. But that's okay. For other people, this is probably your speed, right? Which is what you need. Or a bit of a review if you've done the stuff that's online and you've never actually done things live. Okay, so you can see my iPhone 14 Pro Max simulator worked, right? And it's showing iOS 16.2. What does your show? 16.4, right? Because you have the latest version of Xcode, right? And that's okay, right? So that's something that I wanted to talk about as well, right? So I'm going to stop this thing. You can see that it stops. I don't want to shut down the simulator. If I actually close the simulator, that's not a smart thing to do. It's going to have to restart again. Don't do that, but shut it down by pressing the stop button. Next, let's put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to pull up iTerm again, right, like I said, and I want to go to that. I'm going to use Finder to go to that folder on my desktop, which is where I have MDEV1001 ICEs. That's the one I want. So I'm going to go CD space, and then I'm going to drag and drop MDEV1001 ICEs, this one here, and then I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to do an ls minus al. ls minus al. Al, the dash al means all. Show me everything. Show me the permissions. Show me the the kitchen sink, right? And it shows you something like .ds store. Whenever you do a zip archive, you ever see that .ds store? People are like, what is that, Tom? That's just like, your Mac OS putting in a file for tracking, okay? And then here's your .git folder, and we have ICE1234. This is a great time to put it up on GitHub. So I'm going to say git add git commit -m, and we'll say added project files for ICE4. And then git push. Okay, so those are the things: git add, git commit, git push. Okay, you need to do those steps. If you don't do git add, git commit, git push, you're not going to have an updated repository. So the first thing you do whenever you're working on a project like your assignment 1 is you initialize your Git repository, you do all those things connected to GitHub, all those things. For assignment 1, for people who are doing assignment 1 for this weekend, remember it cannot be part of your in-class exercises. I need a separate repository. If you give me the same one as your in-class exercises, I will not accept it. Please make a separate repository for your assignment, each assignment. It's not going to be assignments. It's going to be assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3, assignment 4. And if you're working with somebody else, you need to share that repository with them and with me, right? So they can have access to it too, right? That's important. Okay, so that's done. So we've done the repository stuff. Let's check it. Let's go up on Chrome and see where it is on GitHub. So pulling this up, and let's go to github.com / oh, by the way, I gotta talk about this too. Some people did really funny things. They gave me like this is their link, github.com / their account name. No, that's not your link. Sometimes I'll get it and I'll go like, there's no repositories here, right? Why? Because you made it private, right? Or why? Because you made it so that you have to actually look at repositories. You need to give me this link, which is MDEV1001 link, this one, so I can see all of them. Your repository should look like this. If you have a question about how your repository should look, it should be like this right now, okay? If your repository doesn't look exactly like this, something's wrong. You didn't get it, or you need to fix it, guys. Please see me after class if your repository does not look like this, if you're here physically. And if you're not here physically, please send me an email and we'll book some time together, okay? But your repository needs to start looking like this as soon as possible. This is my expectation of you for this class and for tomorrow's class, okay? When we do stuff. All right, so that is how we did it. We've got our in-class exercise 4 that's here. And if I look through here, you can see that there's 2 other folders that iOS creates for the project. One of them is your ICE4 folder, right, which gives you all your files, like your app delegate, your info.plist, your scene delegate, and your view controller.swift, right? Those are all the things that are part of your Swift project. Wonderful. Let's go back, and I'm just going to go to Xcode again. Let's go back to Xcode. So back here, and now I'm going to ask you, are you with me? Did you guys do that little thing? I know some people are like, Tom, what are you talking about? Of course we did it. We're experts by week 4, right? We've done a whole calculator. We know what we're doing. Okay. I believe you. Let's continue. So the first thing is this. The next thing is, how the heck do we get our movies on this thing, right? Because one of your challenges is going to be actually doing it on a device. This is the first day we're doing things on a device. How the heck do you do that, right? Indu, how the heck do I get my movies on this thing? What do I do?
So there are frameworks that you use.
I could use a framework. Yeah.
Videos to play the videos, but first we have to have a table that shows movies.
I got to do a table with movies. I got to do something. I got to pass some stuff over. So I've done some convenient work for you, okay? Like I've said to you before. If you look up on Blackboard, please go to Blackboard. I'm trying to save you time here, okay? Because I find that people will struggle with some of this work. And I want to talk about this because it's important to understand how this works. Every platform that you work with, whether it's iOS or Android, you got to figure, and when people ask me questions like, how do you remember all this stuff? I always say this. I always say, remember that everything that's ever been made is made for the average person. I always say that again, right? This is not made for rocket scientists. None of this stuff is made for rocket scientists. Not even Android, not machine learning, none of it. It's all for the average person, right? Which means it can't be that difficult. And if you're racking your brain and breaking your head trying to figure it out, you're doing it wrong. Seriously, there's got to be an easier way. In your mind, first thing you should say is, this can't be that difficult. I'm doing something wrong. I'm overthinking it. It must be an easier way. And there always is, okay? So here's the easier way, okay? I have my movies.json file that I've supplied you right here. This movies.json file is what we need so in your project. So please download this movies.json file right now, okay? You can put it anywhere on your no problem. You can put it anywhere you like, right? And where you want to put it is somewhere that it's accessible, right? So I've already done it, but I want to put it like right here, some place that I can find it, right? So again, the way to do that with Blackboard is save link as, and it's going to ask you where you want this thing, right? So put it in a place where you can find it is my answer. Like for me, I'm going to put it here. That's where I'm going to put it. Okay, so save. It's not exactly in the space that it's going to be in, but it's somewhere where I can find it. Make sure it says movies, instead of movies 1, it's going to say movies.json, okay? Here's something that I want you to do. If you double click on movies.json, right, it should open the default program, and my default program happens to be Visual Studio Code. Here's what I've done. How did I get this, right? I went to CSV to JSON. I converted to CSV first. Let's take a look. So there is a place you can go if you look at something called CSV to JSON, right? CSV to JSON is, you can pick any link. Lots of them, there's a lot of online translators for you. On CSV to JSON, there's another button that says CSV to JSON. And here you can drag and drop your CSV files, right? That's what I've done, right? And when you drag and drop your CSV files here, you can actually clean them up. If you wanted to add things to them, change them, if something was wrong. I had some /ns in my CSV file. Why do I have /ns in my CSV file? How come? Line breaks. But where did I put the line breaks? Genre, actor, directors, all those things had multiple lines, and when I pressed Alt-Enter, it added in a line break in my Excel file. And so when I converted to CSV, it actually kept those line breaks. And then when I converted it from CSV to JSON, it said /n. I don't want /n's. It will mess with you, okay? Do not add /n's. Don't do it, all right? So if you drag and drop your CSV file here, and anywhere you see /n's, change it, right? And then at the bottom, you can click on the convert button. Now this is just one online site, CSV to JSON, right? There's tons of them out there. Not one, there's 10 at least that'll do the same thing for you, okay? Different services. So in a future time, if you're watching this video and for whatever reason this doesn't work for you, there's going to be something else out there that'll do it for you, okay? Maybe by then, who knows, maybe Excel will do a CSV to JSON for you, right? It doesn't do it right now. Okay, so once you do that, you're going to get a file over here, and then you're going to click download, and that's how I got my CSV file, or my JSON file, this movies.json file, okay? And this is what it looks like. I'm here in Visual Studio Code, and it looks just like this. So it has movie ID, title, studio, genre, all this kind of stuff. We're going to come back to this because we're going to need to have all these things when we create our model class. And the thing with core data, it's so easy. It's so stupidly easy, I have to say, like really dumb easy, right? That it literally uses most of this. However, I have to say something, okay? Core data will not like short description. Core data will not like MPA rating. Core data will not like critics rating because it doesn't like upper camel or camel case in any way. It doesn't like that. It likes underscores. It's okay with underscores, and it's okay with, you know, the entire word, however long you want to make it for the most part, okay? But anything like that where you had some kind of this, is not good. It doesn't like it at all. Okay, does that make sense? Please be aware of that when he does it. Just will not accept it, okay? So now we have our data, right? And I want to put it on my application. So the next part is, let's bring up Xcode, and let's bring up that file that I had. This is the file that I have from last time. I need to drag and drop it into Xcode. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this. You can do a copy in your command line, like terminal. You can do all kinds of stuff, but for the simplest way is just drag and drop it and make sure it goes underneath this folder right here, and then let go. You need to make sure that copy items if needed is checked, okay, and that this one, add to targets, is checked, those two, okay? And then click finish. It's going to add that CSV file, or sorry, that JSON file, and if you click onto it, you should see it exactly the same way that you saw it in Visual Studio Code. Are you with me? Right? This is critical. So I put it here in my JSON file, it's inside my iOS document, and we're so far so good, right? And do interrupt anytime you want. Okay, if you think I'm doing it wrong, just say it. Say, Tom, you're wrong. I would do it differently. And I'm okay with that because there's more than one way of doing all this stuff. Okay?
When
Yeah.
we do the draft, where it asks the options to edit these files, so we just keep it same and just click on finish, or do we
Finish. Yeah.
copy anything?
Copy item is the one you want, right? If you don't want to move it. There's no need to, because what if I make a mistake? I want to have that original file. I can always go back and do it again, right? Here's something else. I know some of you are trying to do this with your Mac or your a Hackintosh or whatever, and you don't have, for whatever reason, a mouse, today is not the day to not have a mouse, because I'm dragging and dropping, right? If you don't have a mouse somehow and you try and do this, it may prevent you. It might stop you. Could you do it? Did you figure it out? Awesome. Anyone else have problems dragging and dropping? If you have problems, again, it's $25. Buy a mouse, connect it to a USB-C hub. That's another $25 probably on Amazon, right? And you're going to be golden, okay? Don't use the trackpad, okay? The trackpad is a evil. It's bad. It should be banned, okay? The trackpad came from this game, this movie one time. Do you guys know the history of trackpads? This trackpad that's in the middle of your screen? Look, I've seen this since the 1980s, this thing came out, all right? The trackpad. And it was a separate device you plugged in, okay? It wasn't part of your machine at all right? And when I first saw it, I was like, hey, that's so neat. Let's try it out. And then after the first day, I took it apart and I threw it away because I was like, this is the most useless thing I've ever seen in my life, right? It's nowhere near as good as a mouse still, and that's my opinion. And also, yes, it's convenient when you don't have any mouse space if you're using it on your lap, as in a laptop, but few times we do that, right? So that's the only reason why I have it. Actually, I prefer the Lenovo pointing device that's on the keypad more than this, right? Because at least this way you can push it around. It's still ugly, and it had a couple of keys, but actually acted like a mouse. This doesn't act like a mouse. It acts like something else, right? And it allows you to do gestures and all that stuff. But guys, you know what? The gestures, I don't know how many times do you guys do those flick gestures? Do you flick up? Do you flick? You do it?
Sometimes.
Oh my God. Who are you? What kind of demon? You're a devil, right? Yes, I know some. Yeah.
I love it, like really, overall.
You like the gestures?
That's the only thing that I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Get close enough to what I want it to do.
Can't stand it. Like do one of these, right? So go to the next desktop, go like this to pull that. I can't. I don't bother. Hate it. No, I like two screens. Give me two screens, real screens,
That's
right?
what I like.
Yeah. Wow. I can't do this. All right, let's continue. So, but that's on you. However you do it, if you guys can do it with your trackpad, all the power to you. Hey, my friend, how you doing? All right. Armand just came back. Armand Deep, you're the best. She's my favorite. All right, come on, in. There we go. Okay, she's not my favorite, but everyone's my favorite. All right. But I still like her so much. All right, let's go back to here. So here you can see that we've got all this stuff here. Here's movies. This is a great place. We've just added a file. I know I'm going super slow, guys. I know I'm doing this super duper slow, like actually dumb slow, like I said. But we're doing it because I'm trying to set you up properly for your assignment number 2 right now. And I also want you guys I want to fill in some of those gaps you might have had from that other course you're doing with iOS. Who knows? Maybe I will. But what I want to do now is I want to go back into command line, and this is another place for a commit because we've added a file. Let's do the second commit. So here we go. Commit number 2, git add dot. Git commit -m added movies.json. Git push. Remember the rules for committing, right? You add a file, you commit. Make a change, you commit. Fix a bug, you commit. Add a feature, commit. Go to the washroom, you commit. Kiss your girlfriend, commit, right? Eat some food, commit. Have a coffee, commit, right? Have a lot of commits, all right? Why? It's always better because you can always step back. If you don't have any commits, I can't do anything for you, right? Make sense? All right. I'm being facetious about kissing your girlfriend because I don't even kiss my wife anymore. All right. I'm joking. She's just at a different place. She's upstairs and I'm downstairs. We just never see each other even though we're in the same house because this is COVID or post-COVID, kind of life that we're living. And then she's like, we just got a pool and we never even used the pool, Tom. I know, we're so busy. It's terrible. Git push, we just did. And now we're back to this. And we've done this. And if you notice here on source control, one thing that you can do in the Mac on the iOS side that you can look at is there's some stuff that you can see here, all right, that if you really wanted to take a look here, okay? So, yes, I can do a push. Yes, I can do a pull. I can do all these things. But you know what? They're non-visual in any way. Now, there are some extensions you can get for Xcode, and there are some things you can do. One thing that you'll see for me is I never add extensions and extra doohickeys to Xcode. But the reality is there's a ton of them, There really is. There's a ton of things to make life easier for you with Xcode. Because like we said, Xcode is not the greatest tool, right? And they add to it to make it better. Who likes Xcode? Anyone like Xcode better than Visual Studio? It's okay if you do. Like you just said you love the gestures on a Mac, and I couldn't believe it, right? I was like, really? All right. You don't like Xcode? You're not alone, all right? But if you really love Xcode, there's people out there that like argue with me. I go to the Apple Store, and I go, man, this making apps on your stuff, and I just kind of say it like out of the corner of my mouth, and I'm like, making apps on your platform sucks, right? And they're like, why? Children can do it. And I'm like, really? Children can make apps, okay. I said Xcode is just terrible. But anyway, so that's movies.json. We added that in, and now we're ready to do the transfer. Now, options at this point. We can use movies.json as just some idea, and we can do all the code entry manually. We could do that. What if your movies file was 10,000 lines? Would you add 10,000 lines of code to your, to your database? It's pretty crazy. So that's not really viable for a larger piece of data. Even if it was 100, never mind 10,000, just like 100. It's a big slog, and there's a lot of errors. Like adding code by hand like this, or data by hand, is somewhat error prone. Okay, I'll be honest with you. So if you already have data, like in the form of a JSON file, and you're going to have data because one of the things you're doing with the next iteration is you're adding in things, you're adding your movies in and all that stuff, right? We want to do it this way, right? So we want to do it so that way I can get my CSV file and convert it. And this is called pre-filling. Pre-filling. I want to pre-fill my database with data, okay? I want to pre-fill my room database with data, or my core data. I'm going to do it with MongoDB. I want to pre-fill it with data. I have data. I just want to convert it, right? That's what I want to do. So there's a couple of steps we need to take for this. One, we need to think about how we're going to do it. And a lot of times what we can do is we can have some kind of, seeding function that we do once. Okay? We can do that. That's my preference. Some people will do some crazy stuff and write some crazy code and do whatever on the command line and connect to go into core data and look at SQLite, and you can do all that stuff if you really want to. That's just way too much work for me. Remember I said this, like it's got to be made. If you're doing that much work, you're doing it wrong. So this to me is the easiest way to do it. And so first we have our data, we've converted everything else, we have our movies.json, yes. And the next part is I need some code. I want to make some code examples for you, and I want to look at some code for you that I've already done, okay, in advance. And I've done it in advance not because I don't want to code by hand, but only because I want to save time and I want to share the files with you and also show you another way to share things on GitHub. So please, up on Blackboard, I've given you two more little links. One is this thing called dataseeder.gist is what it's called. A dataseeder.gist. Here it is. You see it? This is actually part of GitHub. You don't have to just share your entire repository with friends. You can share one file, which is what I'm doing right here. A gist is actually really cool because you can actually update it and it'll actually do source control on that too, right? So if you want to share one file at a time with someone, you can totally do that. And this is what I've done here. So here's what I want to do. So I have this function called seed data, all right? And I'm just going to zoom in here so I can talk about what this is going to do, right? Because this is kind of my first step in this whole thing. So here it is. Here's my seed data function. I need Foundation, UI Kit, and Core data in order for me to do this. I'm importing these frameworks, right? And then my function seed data basically uses a guard let, and it does something called a URL, all right? So URL, which is your bundle. What's your bundle? What is your bundle in your iOS? Oh yeah, we're going that deep today, right? Do you guys know? Oh my God. Yes, your bundle is your project, okay? So think about your bundle as your project. And what you want to do is you want to look in the main part of your project. URL is actually interesting. It can be used for all kinds of stuff, files, as well as other things. You can see that I'm looking for a resource. The way you read this is, I'm looking for a resource that's called movies with an extension that's JSON. That's what I'm looking for. And when I use a guard let, it's like an if let. There's always a curly brace like scope afterwards, okay? Every time we have an if let or a guard let, it's like I'm doing a try catch, okay? Where the catch is happening right here. Okay, that's where it's happening. So that means if there's an issue, then it's going to do this, it's going to execute this part. Notice that the error is what we're showing here. Print JSON file not found. Okay, so a guard let is a const, because lets are consts, not like var. URL is the name of the identifier, or the variable constant, whatever you want to call it. We're looking inside the bundle, which is your project. This is like the resources folder of your Android application. Okay, this is kind of what we're doing, resources, and then we're getting this file. So that's the first thing, and we're storing the file itself, or a reference to the file, in URL. That's the first part. The reference to the file is in URL. It's not the file itself, right, or the contents of the file. Now the next part is guard let. Now we want the data, and then we're going to actually put something else in there, which is a try. Okay, so we're trying to get, or trying to open up the file. Data, the data class itself is doing that. The data class basically says, and this is a foundation class, what it does is it tries to get the contents of the URL and store it inside of the data identifier. That's what it's doing, okay? If, for whatever reason, we can't do it, we're going to output an error that says, failed to read JSON file. That's what this does. Next, this is where it gets a little bit hairy. We're going to use something called JSON serialization, okay? So remember what we talked about. We may have talked about this before. There are two parts whenever we have a file that's written. There's encoding and decoding, and also called encrypting and decrypting, and also called serialization and deserialization. So here what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're looking at the JSON serialization. We know this thing has been JSON serialized. It's made as JSON data, right? We want to serialize an object. We're going to convert it to JSON is what we're doing here. This is the conversion process. We're going to look at the JSON object with this data file. This is the data file we're looking. We're not actually adding any options. There's an array of options you can add in. And we're saying that we're going to convert it to, we're going to read it as an array of strings. That's what this is, okay? So we're going to try that, and then after we try, if we get everything, we're going to save it here inside of this identifier as a JSON array. Failing that, because it's a guard let again, we're going to go and output this message that says, failed to parse JSON. So each of these steps, right, is going to do stuff. Think about these big 4 lines of code as actually one line, where we're trying to do stuff over and over again. I'm trying to read this. I'm trying to read this. I'm trying to read that. And iOS loves this kind of stuff because I'm trying to be safe. Worst case, if any of this fails, I'm going to return, and it's not going to do anything. Okay? App delegate. Okay, now this is something else. The app delegate itself is a file that's inside of your application folders, and I'm going to talk about that, right? And what we're doing here is we're getting a reference. That's what this is. This guard let app delegate is saying, hey, look at your application and look at your delegate, that delegate file. We want to convert it to an app delegate, and we want to save it, a reference to it here in the app delegate identifier. That's what we're doing. It's a pointer that we're saving here, right? And that's what we're doing, because we're going to use the app delegate down here. First we get a reference to the file, then we use the file down here. Okay, that's what we're doing, okay? So we're saying, hey, the context that we need is in the app delegate. We're going to look at the app delegate persistent container and the view context itself. That's the view context, right? And we're going to save that as the context of the entire thing. And as we move to the next part, here is the deserialization code, where I'm saying, okay, here is our schema. That's what this thing is, our schema, for what our data looks like. Our data looks like this. Now, I've done this for you guys, right? So you don't have to go and slog this out. And by the way, it says int16s here, right? So when we make our entity, which we're going to do in a second in core data, we're going to make it exactly like this with these exact names. Notice that it says short description, there's all lowercase, and so is MPA rating, and so is critics rating. And it's looking at something called movie. Movie doesn't exist yet. Movie, right? Why? Because it says let movie be the movie context. This is the movie class. This movie class is the entity that we're going to create right now. It hasn't been created yet in core data. Let's do that. So this is the first thing we're looking at here. I'm looking at the file and explaining to you how this is going to work. I'm reading the file in and I'm parsing it. I'm parsing the JSON file. I know this is crazy, but this is a one-time cost. We do this one time, we have all of our data in our core data, nothing to enter, and it's perfect. Who would not want this, right? Otherwise, you're going to slog it out and enter things by hand, 20 entries. But there's a lot of things that I'm asking for 20 entries. Here's what's missing. What's missing here, I can't give you everything, so that's not fair. What's missing in this particular context is your, sorry? The model? The movie model, right? But we're also missing something else. We're also missing the poster data that I want, right? That poster link. If we're going to do a poster link or something else like that, that's not here, right? Anything else you want to add to your movie lines or whatever, it's not here. So you have to modify this thing, right? But at least it's a example, a really good example of how to do this. When you're going to make your assignment, you're going to start from scratch. Here's something else that's really funny about iOS. It's not starting from scratch in iOS is really hard. You ever try and copy an iOS project from one iOS to the other? It's stupidly hard, right? Why? Because this thing points to that thing and that point. It's like, forget it. I'm not doing that. I'm going to make a brand new, just copy and paste stuff over. It's easier. It's way better and less error prone. There are ways of doing it, however. Okay, so that's this model. And I want to keep this up while we're doing it here. Let's go now to Xcode. We know what we want. Now we want to start putting in the model for ourselves. Here's what we do. If I go here at the bottom, you can see that at the bottom, right here, there is a file. If you open it up here, let's just do this. Here it is. Here's the file. And the file that we're seeing is MDEV1001 ICE4 XC data model ID. That's what it is, okay? And this file right here is where we're actually going to do the model. Up at the top here, if I click here, you can see that there is no entities. There are no entities. We have something called default configuration and fetch requests and entities. There's no entities. At the bottom, we're going to add a new entity. Please do this with me. So add new entity. There we go. Let's rename the entity by clicking on it once and clicking on it again. Movies. Or movie is what it should be called. Movie, singular. Movie, right? Or if you click on the entity and if you have the property screen open, you can always change the name here too. Okay, whatever makes it easier for you, right? But it needs to be movie. That is the class name. There are some automatic code generation things you can do here with this class, okay? We're not going to do that today, all right? But we need to set up this model for the first time. This model is more visual than it is anything else. So we don't care right now about fetched properties. We can collapse that. We can also collapse relationships. We don't have that right now, right? And here in attributes, this is where we're going to add some attributes. So again, there's a couple ways to do that. You can click on this plus, and the plus will give you the attribute name, right? The attribute name, the first one should be movie ID, because we're going to use that whole thing from the, and if I did movie ID like this, capital I, capital D, and if I go over here, what type is movie ID? Probably an integer 16, right? And the way to confirm that is if you go back here, this is what we had. Movie ID, capital I, capital D seems to be okay, right? And notice it's as int 16. This is the type that we want, okay? Oops, that's not what we wanted. And then next is, let's go back to that one. Sorry, I'm used to Alt-Tab. Let's do the next one. So the next one is going to be title. And for title, we want it as a string. Okay, there it is. One thing also that you want to notice is if I kind of click down here and click on movie ID sees to be optional. Movie ID should not be optional, right? We should be able to put in the movie ID. And same thing with title. Movie ID is our own personal ID. This is our ID. This is our identifier. If I was going to put together an ID for the movie, this is what I would call it, whatever. Maybe I'm going to call it something like MDEV1, right, as an example. Same thing with string. String should not be optional. String should be non-optional or not null. That's what an optional means. Is it optional, right? Notice one thing, that you cannot assign a key for this thing. Can't do it. This is where core data does all that stuff, the heavy lifting for you, right? The key that we're talking about, like an auto increment and key and all that stuff, that's handled by core data. That's nothing to do with us, right? Indu, would you agree? So that's title. So title in string, you can see that there's a little mark here that says S or N for integer, S for string. So it actually gives you that little thing. The next one would be studio, if I'm not wrong, right? So studio, by the way, it doesn't really matter which order we put it in. And I'll talk about that too. That's also a string. Let's put that string. And let's check on that as non-optional. Let's add another one, which is, again, genre, plural, right? And normally that would be an array of strings. This does not handle an array of strings, as you can see, or a list. We're only making it a string. And that, again, is not optional. So genre. Let's also talk about directors. Right, directors. Again, it's got to be a string type and not optional. Actors. Right, actors. You can also pull it down here if you don't like it there, like doing it here, you can do it here on this side. That's also very good. And I probably missed something. Let's go back because I know there's 4 of them. So there's writers, yeah. Title, studio, genre, directors, and writers. Again, it doesn't really matter the order. Notice that it put it in whatever order it feels like, not me, right? And so we'll do the same thing. We'll say writers. Okay. And here's a string, non-optional. And then the next part is some kind of short description. Now here's where if I put short description, take a look at this. And press enter, it's going to go, bam, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. And so what you can do here is you can go here and just change the capital D to a lowercase d or press enter an underscore. I planned my data seed function to be no, nothing. It's just one big long word, okay? If you like to use an underscore, please change the data seed function I'm giving you, that whole class that I've given you. Because it needs to match, whatever this is, needs to match. So a short description has got to be a string, okay? And again, it's got to be no, that one we can make it optional because sometimes when you're typing stuff in, maybe you want to just enter the basic data first and then go in there and fill it in afterwards. So for me, I'm making that optional, all right? Then you need your MPA rating and length, I think, too. MPA rating is going to be a float. Again, MPA rating should be not optional because we're rating the movie. We're also going to have critics rating. Did I do this wrong? I did it wrong. Critics rating. Critics rating should be a float. Sorry, the other one should be a string. Because MPA rating is it R or is it PG or is it one of those? So that should be a string. Sorry, that's my bad. Right? And critics rating should be float. And the last one I think is length.
We're missing here as well.
See? Length, which should be an integer 16, right? And again, length should be required. And then year. Let's do year. Now, I made year an integer, and I didn't make year a date because I'm not really caring about the date. I'm not asking for like date time or anything like that. And actually, it's easier for you to enter a year as opposed to enter a year, like a calendar pops up or something. We don't need that. So it's going to be integer 16, and again, it's going to be optional. Other things to look about. There are validation elements here that you can activate. So year, I mean, I probably don't want a year because it's a movie that is lower than 1900 and probably greater than, for your app, I don't know how long you can make your app work, 10 years, let's say, if you're going to make your app, and then you have to update this. Maybe something like 2100. I mean, I think if you made it 2100 max, would be probably okay, right? So that kind of gives you a year range, that you would, that you were going to put in there. Running time, length, right, should also have some kind of numbers here too, right? Because length is an integer, you may want to consider the validation that zero length is really not valid, right? It should be at least 1 minute, like a short movie, right, or something like that. So probably make it at least 1, and then the maximum length, I mean, there really isn't a maximum that I've seen, but I mean, I've seen 3-hour movies. I've seen 10-hour movies. Like there's some really big ones. So this is tricky, and I'd probably leave it open. I know this is weird, but this is what I would probably do. But definitely a minimum of 1 is what I would put in there. Movie ID, there's no real ID. We're saying it's an ID. What did we say it was here? We said that it's an ID. You may want to consider that this is also possible as a string. However, if you look at Visual Studio Code, it also sees it as a number. And so because it sees it as a number, we need to keep it as a number for now. All right, that's how I saw it. That's why I'm even leaving it as a number. All right, so again, movie ID should probably have, you can put whatever number you want, other than negative numbers. So I would say that the minimum value should be 0. Okay? And all of these things don't have any minimum value, and I think we've covered everything. Actors, year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 properties. And we can check this with this one. 12 properties here, okay? So all I'm doing here, look what it says here. Movie is the name of my entity. That's my entity. Context is the context that I've defined up here, right? The view container context itself, right? So I'm saying I want to instantiate, that's what this is. Maybe movie is actually a class. So the entity framework itself that's built into core data, it actually instantiates behind the scene a movie class for you, movie model, right? This thing we just did in visually is actually creating the properties for the movie model, right? That's being stored inside of your bundle, right? So movie itself, when I do this, there is no new keyword in Swift. It's thinking about this as instantiating an object of type movie with a context of context. This is a constructor function, if you think about this, or an initializer in this case in iOS, right? I'm storing a reference to the new object in the movie object itself, right? And then what I'm saying is for each property of the movie context, because I'm using the movie model class, right? I'm assigning the JSON object, movie ID, as an integer 16, and the default is 0, right? That's what this thing is. So it's kind of giving it some default values here. Does that make sense? This thing here is doing your conversion. This is your conversion from JSON to your movie model. That's what this is, okay? And then finally at the end, you're going to do a do catch, which is like a try catch in other languages. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to save the context. When this context saves, it actually saves it to core data, right? Context is the core data context. That's what this thing is. I'm reading the movie from the context, and my save function actually updates the movie model, or the data. All right, that's what it does. Okay? Okay. Questions? Yes?
So when I try to camel case that part, it is posting an error property name that was the method, blah blah blah, method anything. But when I try to do it with the prefix setting, it's a long string.
Yeah, I would just keep it low or underscore, right? This way. You're right, it can do this. It's funny. It's the description. It's the name, short is a really funny name because short might be something that iOS is seeing as short, like a value, short data type, right? And then description is also weird, right? So those two names, it's just a bad name for the thing. So, but sometimes what happens is it doesn't allow you to do that. So I sat there and said, you know what? Not doing it. I'm not going to do this. Just make it all one. That's why I did it. But if you feel comfortable doing something and if it works for you, all the power. I'm good. I'm not going to be tied to any of your property names by any means. I don't care. As long as your data works, I'm good. Okay. Sorry?
Even organizations
Yeah.
prefer one.
Yeah. So that's why I'm telling you. It's just better to just do it this way. All right. So that is your file. That is your data file. Let's make this dataseeder.swift. Now we're ready for this. Finally, first we made our model. Now we're going to make this dataseeder class. Okay. And the way to do this is to go into Xcode. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go new file. And I'm going to choose Swift file. Now here's something. What's the difference between Swift file and Cocoa Touch class? What's the difference? Did you guys ever do that? Swift file just gives you an empty Swift file. Cocoa Touch class allows you to inherit, right, from an existing framework. which is actually quite cool. Remember, Cocoa Touch. This is a really weird thing. Whenever I think, these are remnants from another time, you know? Cocoa, huh?
Do you know why did the name?
Yeah, Cocoa Pods. What was that?
Do you know why was the name?
Tell me. Well, because of Java, right? I bet that's my cocoa, you know, cocoa, Java, drinking. I don't know why these people are all JavaScript. Who knows why? It's drink more coffee. You should call it beer script, okay? Something else.
Internet is ever used for.
Coffee, right? Yeah.
Keep an eye on the coffee machine and make it drink.
Right?
That's why they invented it.
Cocoa? Yeah, okay. Cocoa Pods, Cocoa
That's why
Touch.
they invented the internet.
Yeah, I know.
Watch their coffee pot in the other room.
Ridiculous, right?
And they're like, maybe we'll use it.
Maybe we'll use it for other things, like, you know, the rest of the world can use it for stuff, make games stuff. So Swift file is what I want to use. I'm going to click next. And when I do that, it's going to ask me for the name and where I want to put it. I'm just going to call this exactly what it's going to be called. So it's going to be something like dataseed.swift, I think is what I called it. Is that what I called it? I think I called it. Data Seeder. All right, there we go. Data Seeder. Sure. Dataseeder.swift. And then once I've done that, I'm going to click create. And it's going to have our empty file. It has foundation, but I just want to wipe this whole thing away, right? Because I've given you a gist, right? So the gist file is right here. So what you can do is go to raw. See this little raw thing here? And I can literally just copy paste all this code I've done for you, right? To make it easy. Now this is really good example code, and that's why I've given it to you, right? I don't want to give it to you because, I don't know, my code is better than your code or any of that stuff. I have no ego like that, honestly, right? But it works, right? So that's why I'm giving it to you. There we go, right? Okay. I think we need to make another commit. Fact, I think maybe we're a commit behind. I know you think I'm crazy, but I'm showing you what I would like you to do, right? I want you to make lots of commits, all right? Okay, so seed data, here it is. This is the seed data, dataseeder.swift, but it has the seed data function. So this isn't even a class. This is just a function that I'm going to run here randomly. Is that allowed with iOS? Like, can I do that? Well, the answer is yes. You can run functional code, not just class-based or object-oriented code, just like this, right? So I'm just actually putting it in this like one little function. If I really wanted to make it a class, I could, but I mean, we're only literally going to run this one time, ever, right? And never again. We're never going to run this code again, just once, right? Now, if you're someone who is going to delete this stuff afterwards, that is a whole other thing, like wiping away core data. I don't know, right? Maybe make a new class. It's just easier. But yeah, there's ways of doing that too, like dropping the entire thing. So here, this is the first part. So now let's make a commit. So I'm going to say something like, let's go back to here and say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added core data model and data seeder. Git push. Okay? There we go. Are you with me? Am I going too slow?
I'm
Yes.
suddenly getting username and password issues on my all of a sudden.
See? Damn iOS, right? Did you figure it out?
Not really.
Yeah, you got to figure it out because username and password means you have to put in the username and password. Don't use the one that's built into iOS. You built it the one in Xcode, things will break. I guarantee you, things will break.
I wasn't using that one.
But you have Xcode up, right? Yeah. Xcode, well, where do you think your Git came from? Xcode, right? So you need to fool around with Git to make it happen. I would look it up. I also had that problem, and I did extensive lookups with Google and other things until I fixed that problem. So I don't want any kind of like weird encryption, or I have to put together some RSA key or some other weird stuff to connect with. I don't want any of this stuff. None of that. No, refuse. Right? That's my GitHub. I want to treat it my way. Right? Apple. All right. So now that we've done that and we've got this going, we have to activate it somewhere. And the place to activate it in your application is in your appdelegate.swift. So appdelegate.swift hardly gets used by anybody here. I'm guaranteeing you. You probably did like view controller. And maybe one day you'll use app delegate, probably not, all right? But your app delegate is kind of interesting. And what it does is it takes care of all of your events that happen inside of the application itself, right? As well as other things. And it connects nicely to your scene delegate. So if you look at your scene delegate does some interesting stuff too. So here's your scene, and then you can see that the scene did disconnect, the scene did become active, the scene will enter foreground. These scene delegates .swift file, what they do is you can actually literally put print statements in all of these, and it'll show you all these events. Remember, what we're looking at here is the life cycle of your entire application. That's what this is. By the way, Android has something very similar, right? Except it does things differently. So, but for the most part, that's what your scene delegate is. So your app delegate is interesting because it's the thing that's connected to your core data in the first place. Notice that there is core data up here. I didn't put that in. It was done for me. When I checked off that button, core data, when I created my application, it did some work for me. It did some work for me. It added a model, and it did some work in here, right? What we want to do is, where it says the first little application function, there's a few of them, right? These are different functions or overloaded functions. So basically the same function name with different options, right? Here's this one is did finish launching with options, this one. So the application finished launching with options is what this is, right? And if you look inside here, this is where we want to call, and I'm not joking around, our little function, which is cData. We want to call the cData function inside of my app delegate.swift right here. So just type in cData, and it should come up. How come it comes up? How come this comes up? I don't understand. Shouldn't I have to put something before it, like, I don't know, like a package name or some weird, like, whatever? How come? There's no class, so this is in the global namespace. That's what this thing is. So cData is now global. We're going to run this once, and we're going to do it now. So the way to test this now is just click that play button, baby, right? And if everything goes well, it should not give you an error, and import all of your data into your application, right? And the way to know that is down at the bottom where it says data seeded successfully. See that little note? If it doesn't say that, then something went wrong. And you did something wrong. You didn't do what I did, whatever. Congratulations if you got to this point. You've added your data to your model. That's what you've done. And you did it with no SQL statements, with no import statements, with nothing. All right? Well, we did do it with some code. All right? By the way, if you look online, they actually talk about things like Python. Do it with Python. Do it with C++. Do it with this thing. Do it with that thing. But why? Here. Do this. Do it like this. Okay? Great. We've done something. Let's stop our simulator and let's put this up on GitHub. I'm serious, right? Git commit -m. Added data is what I'm going to put in there. Added data. Okay? Git push. Yay! I pushed it. All right, and now, once we've done that, comment this out, please, because we're never going to do it again. We're never going to do this again, ever, right? And I'm telling you this because, well, not in the same way, okay? If we're ever going to modify data in the future, or we add more things, we might want to use the app for that, right? We should probably use the app to change stuff and move things. We may use cData again if we wipe out everything. And we might want to seed it with the original data again. That's why I commented it out. So we might want to go back here and do it one more time. Yes?
We changed the default values.
Yep. All right. Well, they're warnings are warnings. You should not ignore them. But yeah. But don't worry about that for now. Yeah. No, leave it for now. Is the answer. But no, you should not ignore warnings. Warnings tell you stuff that there's, especially when it comes to UI layout, warnings tell you stuff you should not ignore, ever, right? Don't ignore them. Okay, so that's the first part. Now we have our data. And we're sitting at 5:39. I've talked for about an hour and 40 minutes. And this is a great place to take a break. Okay, so let's take a short break, 5 minutes, we'll come back, and then we'll read our data and see what that looks like. Build our little UI, okay? I'll stop recording. Any questions about anything we've done so far? Please let me know. Any questions from the people online, from the people here in house? Anybody? And of course now, there it is.